The fourth edict already burns for your world. Rapture of flame. Engulf. Behold the burning horizon. Fields of ash and chasms of flame shall restore her glory. Her only salvation is written in ash. Let fear of the void control you, so she may be reborn. Who the mother soul must. We that are one hear the great winds, infinite pursuit. The abyss knocks once, and is answered by four. Run. They fight once more. We that fail.
Hey everyone, today I want to share my favorite build for this early access league, the Crit Flameblast featuring a Cast-on-Ignite Frostwall and Comet combo. That's another off-meta build that serves as a solid all-rounder, great for clearing maps and tackling bosses on a budget ranging from 10 to 100 device. So let's break down how this fiery abomination works. Flameblast is one of the few channeling skills in the game, a blazing pizza that you can either make yourself or outsource to the Solar Orb. The interaction with Solar Orb includes built-in cast speed, which is especially helpful for mapping. As a Blood Mage, we scale damage primarily through critical damage. Ignite is helpful for tougher bosses, but I haven't found a way to rely on it exclusively. That's where the Cast-on-Ignite setups come in. It helps to fill the gap in a boss damage and makes mapping much smoother. You are probably wondering where Archmage is, and surprise, it doesn't work with the Flameblast. Because of this, we are forced to focus heavily on critical strikes and the Cast-on-Ignite combo. This build truly embodies a real mage archetype, meaning we will be squishy. However, experienced players should have no trouble handling every map. Since we are playing as a Blood Mage, we are also investing in a life and energy shield. Life globes will be one of healing sources. You will need at least one gain on kill on duels and cannibalism. Green Fist is another great addition. It synergizes well with collecting globes because you are doing it anyway. This build requires balancing damage, speed and defense carefully. Thankfully, the passive tree is very versatile, and I will cover the alternative options at the end of the video. Gearing is very straightforward for this build. For wanton focus, prioritize, of course, plus all 2 spell gems, critical chance, cast speed, spell fire damage, gain, % damage as lightning damage, and the mana is a nice addition. It's worth to mention that gain damage as lightning will be quite useful against bosses, and you will see in the background that this pretty small number is still generating shocks on a Xesht quite easily. Good rings are crucial because we need as much fire and cast speed as possible, especially since we are using the Ingenuity. For the helmet, look for a combination of life, mana and energy shield. Critical chance is a nice bonus. And it's worth noting that you likely need more intelligence, making the helmet an ideal slot for this stat. The same principle applies to boots and gloves, so focus on life, mana and energy shield. For your amulet, aim for at least 40 spirit, alongside as much mana and life as possible. By now, you are probably realized that the Cast-on-Ignite setup is extremely mana hungry. Body armor, however, is absolutely cheap, but ideally should have as much spirit, life and energy as possible. The build doesn't require a high amount of spirit to function. A basic setup needs 120 spirit, which is enough for a blink and single Cast-on-Ignite, or just 2 Cast-on-Ignite activations. In my endgame setup, I have 266 spirit, but 30 of that is used for mana remnants or an extra minion, both of which provide only marginal gains. Because of this, you might consider dropping spirit from the amulet in favor of rarity, energy shield, max life, mana, or just spell damage. So, the jewels. Against the darkness, look for a version that suits your budget. Life instead of fire damage is an excellent option here, as life scale is critical damage in this build. But you might look for budget options by exploring alternatives with spirit. From nothing, Eldritch Battery version can save you at least 5 to 7 passive points, which can be then allocated to critical strikes or other energy shield nodes. The third jewel is the most affordable, and it's Controlled Metamorphosis. It should allow you to grab these 4 quite important passives. For rare jewels, aim for critical chance, critical damage, ignite magnitude. At least one jewel should also include 2% mana recover and kill, 2% life recover and kill. So, now let's talk about the gem setup. The support gems are listed in order of importance for the build. I will first cover mapping setup and boss killer swap later. For Flameblast, use the following supports. Arcane Tempo, this is essential for mapping, as faster channeling means faster scream clearing bursts. Considered casting, while it slows down our channeling, it helps procs massive ignites on tougher enemies. Potential, this fills any gap in our critical chance, giving us easy 100% critical chance during mapping. Magnified Field improves clear speed. Fire Penetration is the cherry on top for extra fire damage. The first Cast-on-Ignite setup will be mana intensive, so Inspiration is a critical support gem. Pair it with a Comet and Profane Ritual, supported by Energy Rotation and Spell Cascade. Profane Ritual serves as our generator for power charges, which are crucial for the potential support gem in Flameblast. The second Cast-on-Ignite setup includes Frostwall, which will be instantly destroyed by falling comets for additional burst damage. Don't forget to use Shatter Crystals, which can be mandatory if you socket lower level comets or you will lack damage during early steps with the build. Alternative is the Icicle support. Detonate Death is an additional free damage source since it scales with corpse life, not gem level, making it cheap to cast. However, it can consume corpses needed for Profane Ritual, which might be noticeable on maps with fewer enemies like Vault Temple, but it shouldn't be an issue. Other useful supports include Impetus for consistent wall generation and just a Spell Echo. Solar Orb acts as the utility powerhouse with the following supports: Fire Exposure, strip away for greater exposure effects, and fonts that are useful for sustaining mana and life. The key auras for the build are Blink and Green Fist. Blink is essential. It's a lifesaver and significantly speed ups the mapping. I can't really imagine playing without the Blink in the endgame. Green Fist is mandatory for tougher maps, but less critical for easier tier 15s. If you are missing Spirit or haven't acquired Against the Darkness yet, consider dropping Cannibalism and Clarity to save Spirit. The setup is possible to map at tier 15s with just one Cast-on-Ignite, but the clear speed will be slightly slower. If you have enough Spirit at this stage, you might consider swapping Cannibalism and Clarity for Blasphemy, enabling the use of Temporal Chains, Enfeeble, or Flammability. This can improve survivability or amplify damage against enemies with high elemental resistances. Personally, I don't find Blasphemy very useful. The area of effect is small, and most dangerous hits come from a distance. Additionally, aura effects from the Blasphemy are less impactful compared to self-cast options. If you have any source of lightning damage, which is usually from the wand or the unique jewel, you might use Mana Remnant as minor backup during bossing and mapping. In a setup for the boss, for the Flameblast gem setup, make the following swaps. Drop Potential, as it relies on corpses to generate power charges, which are typically absent during boss fights. Instead, use Inevitable Critical, replace Magnified Effect with Conk Effect, and you might swap Fire Pen for Frostfire to create massive ignites. However, beware that Frostfire consumes freezes, which can leave you vulnerable. In the Cast-on-Ignite setup, we can also swap Profane Ritual for Stormfire support or Core Penetration, and Detonate Death for Eye of Winter, ensuring almost 100% critical chance against the boss. 2 Eye of Winters would be an overkill and would drain your mana, dealing marginal damage. The last thing to switch is the Spell Cascade with Spell Echo, since it provides more damage for comets. However, be mindful of your mana pool, as it increases the mana cost. Once you start progressing with the build, you will notice that some of the swaps won't be necessary every time, because the swapping would take more time than just bursting down the bosses. For tougher encounters, consider swapping one jewel that grants mana kill for Prism of Belief. However, keep an eye on your mana pool, as higher gem levels significantly increase costs. Xesht and the Arbiter are almost impossible to freeze during the fights, even with glaciation, so it's better to just use Fire Penetration instead of Frostfire. For Soul Offering, we are adding a summon that costs 20 to 30 Spirit. These summons can be supported by Calling Strike and Blind. You can achieve this by dropping Green Fist and Mana Remnant, as they are not very useful during these fights. Sigil of Power is obtainable from random stuff, is another valuable addition. The setup for Pinnacle bosses will be clunky. It's best used at the start of the particularly difficult fight. As you become more comfortable with the build, you can start casting it mid-combat. However, if you are new, don't worry about perfect execution right away. At the start of the boss fight, you can optionally cast Flammability, but I recommend reserving it for the battles like the Arbiter. He is tanky during the first few seconds, giving you a good window to set up your abilities comfortably. Such a good guy. The following setup should cost around 90 to 120 divines and should allow you to handle all Pinnacle bosses. However, the +4 version of Arbiter might still pose a challenge and could require additional 120 divines to burst him down faster. Or just get good. For T15s, mapping a budget of 10 divines should be sufficient to get started. In the path of building, you will find an additional passive tree optimized for lower levels. The endgame tree is well balanced, making it suitable for both bossing and mapping. For 99% of situations, you won't need extra damage if you are skipping Pinnacle bosses. The following adjustments will help create a smoother farming experience in maps. In most cases, the amount of critical bonus damage provided by the tree will be an overkill. You might consider relocating points into Energy Shield and Recovery for more survivability. One last note about passives, which are Annoints. The best option should be Storm Charged, but once you gain enough levels and saved passive points using unique jewels, you might be able to pick it directly from the tree. It's relatively close, and the 2 nodes before it will provide cold and fire penetration as well. Other viable Annoints options are Invocated Efficiency, Dynamism, Conservative Casting, or Mental Toughness, depending on whether you need more damage or mana. Besides that, it's worth to keep an eye on Megalomaniac jewels, but these tend to be pretty expensive for what they offer. What is worth to farm with this build? To be honest, I think everything is worth to consider. Bridge is very fun, but I don't have patience to pick every single splinter, no matter how much value they have. Expedition is pretty easy, but you need to pay attention to mods that shuts down your damage, like Can't Be Ignited or Fire Immunity. Currently, my favorite type of content are just rituals. Basically, I'm just looking for the boss invitations and endowments. Usually that nets me about 20 divines daily for playing like a few hours. You might ask why I skip Delirium. Well, like, life is grey enough. I just refuse to use this mechanic. This looks like a cheap shader that makes the game look like a crap. So what's next? Well, I probably continue playing this build for the next few weeks, and I will report back if I find any improvements. For now, the path of building link is in the description. I'm excited to see what the new support gems will be introduced to the game, as there is currently very little support for channeling skills and spells. I'm guessing that in the future updates, the build might receive some nice additions from GGG. I mean, I'm certain it will happen. But I plan to update this guide for the next league. I really enjoy the playstyle and the process of the building this character, and I hope you enjoyed it too. If you like it and you want to see more of this type of content, please consider subscribing. Don't hesitate to ask if you have any questions. See ya.